Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tier Talk, by the way. All right, so guys, the narrative that the media creates matters. And when you're following the David and Celeste case, you'll notice that the narrative keeps shifting. It goes from what could be a very unique relationship with David and Celeste to now let's blame her, to now let's blame her family. And the shift may have come when a new lawyer was hired by the name of Blair Burke. With that said, for us that have been following the story, for us that follow true crime, a lot of us are connected to the victim. We want to try to give the victim a voice, maybe a place where they could create an impact. And when there's an attack on that victim, we get very defensive, and we do feel that attack, however subtle it may be. We do feel the attack. I also felt it with Mark Sanchez and Perry Toll. I also felt it with Mark Sanchez and Perry Toll. We did a show on this yesterday where the narrative seems to be favoring a little bit of Mark Sanchez, or just the verbiage. You guys got to be very careful of the verbiage that's being used, because it will sell it out as if it's fact when it's not. And now when the truth comes in, you have to try to fit that truth in obstacles, which makes it very hard for the true story to be told. Sometimes these cases aren't as complicated as we think. It's just there's been narratives that have been created that's making it more complicated. There's a thing that journalists use. It's called an inverted pyramid. And you see it in this case here with Celeste Rivas and David. At the very top, you'll see headlines and opening lines that create a bit of a frame. That label is what the public remembers, what gets screenshotted, and what circulates on social media. It's strong, simple, emotional. As the articles move downward, the tone softens. The middle and bottom carry the caveats. Cause of death, like in this case here for Celeste Rivas, cause of death undetermined, no suspect's name, investigation ongoing, but then the reader's mind's already anchored. So these are things that come in our caveats, but they're not placed at the top. What's placed as the top is what people are trying to push as definitive fact. And then later on, it becomes a bit more tentative. And again, this is called the inverted pyramid of journalism. Strongest, most attention-grabbing details at the top, context, nuance, and disclaimers at the bottom. And psychologically, most people never make it past the first few lines, meaning the headline and lead become the truth in the public's memory, even if the fine print complicates the matter. So a lot of us that are following this, it is a bit confusing, because we have to navigate through obstacles to try to see where the fact places in. And we may be placing fact next to rumor, when at the end of the day is, well, this article says this. No, the title of the article says that. Maybe even the paragraph underneath says that. But you got to read the whole article. So when the world first heard that a body had been found in the Tesla registered to singer David, it wasn't just news. It was a story engineered for maximum shock. And nobody engineered it better than TMZ. Over the course of just a few weeks, TMZ didn't simply report the facts. They framed them, reframed them, and pivoted the public narrative. It went from suspicion of David himself to the life choices of a 14-year-old Celeste Rivas, to the family of the troubled home, and finally to a split story of grief and celebrity downfall right now, because now it looks like the last article about him, signing over his homes. I mean, now we're following a celebrity who is now maybe the victim here, the stuff that he's losing. They almost did that with Mark Sanchez yesterday. So tonight we're not just tracking what happened, we're tracking how the psychology of media framing shaped the way millions of people now remember this case. So again, there's a thing called primacy bias. It's the first thing you see sets the anchor. And then you got to look at the paragraph underneath it as well. And then eventually you start to see the nuances, the things that start to pull back on what's definitive. So, or what you think is definitive. So if I'm an investigative journalist and I'm looking up something and I'm making my phone calls, I will say probably, please confirm this if I'm looking for some law enforcement confirmation. Or I may say I spoke to LEPD and they have said this. But when you say law enforcement sources, police sources, what does that mean? And usually when it's tentative like that, that's where you start to see rumor mill, stuff that hasn't been solidified as fact being put in. And again, it's just people will take it. Oh, but it comes from police resources. Yeah, but if you notice, when it came from a police resource officially, it would say confirmation from police or spoke to LAPD homicide division. This just says my police resources. So anybody could say that because they're not being questioned to produce the resource. So with that said, they could run with a rumor mill to get the views, the clicks, to get the narrative they want. And then later on, as you read through, they also protect themselves by covering later in the article and probably very briefly something that would go against that original rumor mill. But again, you have to look at that. You have to look at, what was the resource for that? Because how come to the rest of this article, the stuff that they're confident with, they say have been confirmed by police or spoke to LAPD. But this here, it says police resources or law enforcement resources, double general. A police resource could be someone not even involved in the case. A law enforcement resource could be someone that's not involved in the case. It could be someone that has a law enforcement background from Alaska, but it still counts as a law enforcement resource, but we may think that it's connected to the case. And then when you ask them, hey, who was that law enforcement resource? Oh, it's someone we know that is out in Alaska that we're connected to. Really? Irrelevant. But you posed it as if it was relevant. And again, they sell it. So the first TMZ headline was blunt and horrifying. Dead body found in Tesla, registered to singer David. But look at this. Hacked up body found in impounded Tesla linked to singer. Look at that. I want to read the first paragraph here. Law enforcement sources tell TMZ the body found in Tesla was chopped up and heavily decomposed. The medical examiner will determine the exact cause of death. They wanted to run with chopped up. They wanted to run with hacked up, but they couldn't really prove it. So they said law enforcement sources, because as you read the article later on, LAPD tells TMZ, and then it goes into human remains, not anything hacked up. And then it will say things even confirmed by police. But people who may not know the difference will just see law enforcement sources. Okay, so again, the details were cinematic, chopped up, heavily decomposed, stuffed in the trunk of a Tesla or frunk. Buried deep in the story was the cautious note, police haven't yet determined cause of death. But by then it didn't matter. People, when they originally saw this, what they saw was, or when they read it, what they read was murder, because it was put in a frame that way. It was framed that way for people to believe that it must have been murder because she was chopped up. This is a primacy bias in action. The brain latches onto the first frame of a story and struggles to update later. What sticks is celebrity, singer, body chopped up in his car, and the nuance that the cause of death was unknown, that the car had been impounded for days, is forgotten. TMZ chose clarity over complexity. Famous person plus gruesome discovery equals instant scandal. And people ran with that. People ran with what they saw on the surface. And they start, not realizing it, but when they're doing their little research, you got bias coming into that research, confirmation bias. And it just sets the narrative in play. So again, they're going by what's in surface, don't really do a deep dive. And now you start having mass hysteria through social media right now. Now, we got to wait 7 days, but then eventually, and that there's David and Celeste there, they do discover, they're able to identify who the body is. So 8 days later, TMZ pivoted with another set of exclusives. Authorities identify body found in Tesla. So we have this one. Mother tells TMZ it's her missing daughter. And if you read the article later on, at least when this was presented, remember, we have to go backwards. Mother felt it was her daughter. Could have been her daughter. And then the other article we have here is singer David has matching tattoo of victim. Now, granted, when we found this out at that time, when you look at the title matching, we automatically picture it as being two couples getting a matching tattoo. So it paints the narrative that they could have been a couple. Now, granted, at this point, we know that there's a connection because she's in his vehicle, but we don't know if there's a relationship yet. So this starts to paint the narrative that there's a relationship that people are running with. And then later on in the article, it starts to tell you about how there are certain singers like Rihanna and Lindsay Lohan that may have that tattoo. So it could have been a tattoo because it was trending. Celebrity has it. Now later on, obviously we know a little bit more now than we did then. But when this was pushed, this is what was sold, that they had matching tattoos as if they together decided to do this when there was no facts on that. And then later on in the article, they mentioned that other celebrities have those types of tattoos, because maybe we wouldn't think of the trending side. Maybe what we think about mostly is couples that are in love that do that. But there's also parasocial relationships where it's one-sided and you kind of connect with the celebrity. And again, matching tattoos also highlights, but it pushes the thought that they both were willing partners, that they both decided to do this, that David told her to get the tattoo and that Celeste got it. Or it doesn't note the fact that it could have been just someone following her favorite celebrity. When I covered this, I covered both. I said it could have been maybe some level of control, but also could have been a young girl following a celebrity. So the article, the victim was identified as Celeste Rivas, 14. Her mother told TMZ that Celeste had a boyfriend named David. Side by side, TMZ splashed photos of their identical tattoos. They do also talk about that David didn't have a tattoo until after September of 2024, and they see it through a photo. But how do we know it hasn't been Photoshopped? Has that been confirmed? This is narrative anchoring parent 14-year-old with boyfriend named David. Doesn't prove anything, but it anchors the audience to a forbidden romance frame. Tattoos, ambiguous by nature, were presented as if they were evidence. And once you see the image, your brain fills in the blanks that these two were connected. In one stroke, David went from car owner with bad luck to possible secret boyfriend of a minor. The narrative escalated from mystery to scandal. But maybe they jumped the gun a bit too quick on that. Because right now people are still really trying to determine the relationship. A lot of us believe that there was a relationship here. But again, the narrative was first set by TMZ. And then eventually you get the lawyer that comes in, Blair Burke, and the narrative changes a bit. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. But now it's less about David, who could have groomed her, could have lured her. Maybe it's not a runaway, it's someone that's been lured. And now it's about the troubled home life. Well, what is trouble to a teenager? Could it be a house with rules? I mean, I covered all this. So feel free to visit the other videos. But now you start to see there's a shift. So then came the counterpunch. Just as David hired powerhouse attorney Blair Burke, TMZ rolled out a different angle. Celeste troubled past. I got Celeste Rivas' death investigation focuses on runaway past. So there's one article. So Celeste Rivas' death, cops eye runaway past, troubled home life. And if you read it, there's caveats, very small little things towards the end that maybe looks towards David, but at the very beginning, it's about her home, what she ran away from. And it basically maybe paint him out as a hero, or maybe trying to do something they can to redefine the relationship because maybe he's the protector. But either way, the narrative is starting to shift. And then supposedly she had IDs. And they were saying that she was over 19. So this article comes out. Right here, David's friends say they thought Celeste was his girlfriend. Shocked she was 14. Again, still putting something on her. She had these IDs, and maybe that explains why she traveled around all the time. No, you can have IDs, but you don't have money. You don't have resources. Maybe she ran away multiple times because she knew where she was going. She had comfortability in where she was going. But you notice they don't say it's from David, because they knew if David would have said, well, I thought she was 19, nobody would believe him. So they go to everybody around him, including neighbors, that we haven't even really verified. So again, narrative shifts there. And then you have cops called to Celeste's home 11 times before her death. And I did a video on this, guys. And this, to me, was the first time where I really saw really biased reporting. because let me just show you the picture of this article. Let me see. Celeste. I want to show you this because they made it look like that the calls were strictly because it was a troubled home. And it could have been the fact that she had ran away so many times. They were checking up, following up. I mean, you even have they said one of the calls were at the liquor store where they may have had the first surveillance footage of her running away that morning in March. But it could have just been follow-ups. She ran away multiple times, but that's not in here. And it looks like the dates coincide with when she was running away. But again, that has to be confirmed. The language shifted. Trouble home life, fake IDs. Friends thought she was 19. Police called to her home 11 times. This is the victim blaming pivot. Instead of David being deceptive, Celeste is painted as deceptive. Instead of David being responsible, her family and even the police are framed as negligent. The 11 police visits details is particularly powerful. It directs outrage away from David and into systemic failure. Readers debate whether police or parents dropped the ball, diffusing attention away from David's role. And because people are prone to attribution bias, they start explaining Celeste's faith by her environment. She was a runaway, unstable household, not by what may or may not have happened with David, what lured her. And this was the moment David stopped being the sole protagonist in TMZ's version of the story. That's the moment. And then that's when we start seeing things differently. Like, are we really painting a runaway, troubled home, and then forgetting the fact that she was found in the body of this gentleman's car and that there could have been a relationship? You started the path that way, and then you create a big shift. Then you got late September, the lawyer's hand. So with Burke on board, TMZ's tone noticeably softened. Articles now emphasize that police hadn't named the suspect and that it wasn't even confirmed as homicide. Coverage highlighted David's career fallout, canceled shows, and sponsors walking away. Now we're starting to see how it's affecting David. Psychology. This is legal framing through ambiguity bias. By stressing uncertainty, maybe no crime at all, the public begins to doubt their initial assumption. At the same time, shifting focus to David's loss income evokes sympathy bias. We start to feel for the star's suffering fallout, regardless of his actual involvement. Blair Burke's playbook is clear. Complicate the story, blur responsibility, and reposition David as collateral damage in a tragedy rather than its cause. Guys, why do you think these type of lawyers get paid big bucks? Because they have access to the media. They have access to create narratives. That's part of their job too. So sometimes you pay big bucks to their connection towards the media because the story shifted. It totally shifted. So then you got Celeste's tragedy, vigil, and community in grief. That's this one right here. Let me show you. Family and friends gathered Monday at Queen of Haven Cemetery at Mortuary as they carry the slain 14-year-old casket to her final resting spot. And they talk about her service, no longer being hacked up, by the way. They never pulled back on that, just decomposed body. But they make sure this article matters because in this article, because maybe they thought more people would read this, as reported, Celeste's decomposed body was discovered last month in the front trunk of a Tesla belonging to singer David. The car was abandoned near a house the singer was renting in the Hollywood Hills and was impounded. Celeste's body was found days later in the vehicle at a Hollywood tow yard. Police believe Celeste, whose friends in David's circle reportedly thought was 19 years old, look how they highlight that in red. That's important. Sorry to protect David there. Had been dead for weeks before her remains were found. She'd been reported missing by her family in early 2024. In the time since her body was discovered, David had been radio silent, pulling the plug on his tour, shelving his deluxe album rollout Withered, and even apparently moving out of the Hollywood Hills rental home where LAPD have executed a search warrant. He hasn't been spotted in public since. All right. So now, and then the other article I have is transferring Texas home to his mother. This is the most recent. This one actually just came out today. So I said, you know what? Might as well put this in here. Let me find it. David transfers Texas home. So David is making some real estate moves as cops investigate the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas, whose decomposing corpse was found in his Tesla. He transferred 2 of his Texas homes to his mother. According to new legal docs obtained by TMZ, the singer transferred the deeds to 2 Houston area residents he owns under a trust to his mother. David made the changes on September 18th and September 22nd, and the 18th was the same day cops were called to one of his homes for a swatting incident. The caller, who was apparently using a device to mask their voice, falsely reported a shooting with a dead female victim. It looks like his parents and his siblings were already living in one of the homes when cops showed up for the swatting call. His parents answered the door and told police David's younger brother and sister that were upstairs. As we reported, LAPD executed a search warrant at the LA rental home where David was living on September 17th. David's government name is David Anthony Burke. Is tied to a shocking discovery of Celeste Rivas' body last month. She has been reported missing from her Lake Elsinore, California home in early 2024. Authorities believe she may have been dead for weeks before a decomposing body was found in Tesla's front trunk. David canceled the rest of his tour and put his deluxe album rollout with it on hold. He has not been in public since then. We reached out to David's lawyer for comment. So far, no. Now, it's funny because maybe evidence, from what I'm hearing, may not be going his way, maybe. So they were putting down, as a reminder, he's not a suspect. Now that's not even being said, but I think now they're just talking about his downfall. So what's your thoughts on these shifts in narratives? I would love your opinion on these shifts in narrative. Am I the only one that feels this, or are you guys feeling it as well? I was just curious to get your thoughts. As always, guys, stay safe.